Hey guys, welcome back to the Reflection Room. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. I knew that I wanted to take some time today and share a thought I had earlier today, and I hope that it resonates with a lot of you guys. So I was scrolling on TikTok. I have limited my amount of time on TikTok quite a bit. So no one's perfect, right? The two posts that registered for me were pretty heavy in content and information. And my first thought was like, how ironic. Here I am, like trying to detach myself from the work that I do. And then the stuff I end up seeing online because of my algorithm naturally is pretty heavy. And then it got me thinking a little bit about what's that trauma dumping? But I realized, that was something that it took me a while to kind of pick up on and recognize, and I'm in the field. So I was wondering, and I'm curious to see if this is something that resonates with a lot of people. And I wonder if people even recognize the difference between trauma dumping and just normal, natural, healthy sharing. And so today I want to have a conversation with you guys about when sharing can become trauma dumping and then how to protect yourself, your overall mental health online without coming across as detached, disengaged, having to totally shut down social media. I know a lot of people will do that cold turkey, or having to prevent yourself from coming across as cold or really kind of uncaring. So I thought I would start out with this, which is just like a simple definition of trauma dumping versus sharing. So, trauma dumping, which is a term that most of you guys are probably super familiar with. We hear it all the time in social media or on, TV shows, or people are just using it in their normal language. But essentially, trauma dumping is when someone decides to share information with another person, no matter what the medium is, that's very heavy in nature. And there is minimal warning. There isn't a trigger warning. There isn't hey, do you have the capacity for this? Can I just vent for a little bit, and then waiting for the other person to give the green light? The idea behind it is the person just like says it, just dumps it, and there are no boundaries, no guardrails that are in place. There's no like worrying about how the other person is receiving the information. And this happens a lot of times in normal day to day conversation. A lot of times I've had conversations with clients where they've shared that they have a friend that is super negative, always complaining, always dumping on them, but they're never open to feedback, to helpful solutions, and they kind of go around that mountain time and time and time and time again. And yes, that would be an example of trauma dumping. And it wasn't until I really saw those two posts that I realized, wait a minute, this actually happens on social media a lot more than people even realize. And so yes, here we are setting restrictions and boundaries. Boundaries is probably a better word. Boundaries with our loved ones and friends and family, coworkers, where it's like, I don't know if I can really be around them for that long because they tend to just dump on me. And we don't realize that it's happening on a day to day basis on our social media platforms. The difference between that and natural sharing, I would say with sharing, there is this, or healthy sharing. Oftentimes, there are a few things that we're gauging. We're gauging, is this the right context? So when when I'm in a meeting and I'm surrounded by my supervisor and other leadership team and my coworkers, is that really the right time for me to turn to my bestie at work and let them know about the argument that I had with my boyfriend the day before? Probably not, right? So context and setting is key. And then also timing, is this the right time for me? Is this the right time for them? You're gauging whether or not the person even has the capacity, has the emotional margin or bandwidth in order to be able to take in the information that you're trying to share with them. Or is this a relationship that I'm constantly doing that in? So am I just eroding the relationship that we have in place to the point where there's not going to be really anything healthy that's left? Do they typically provide me support? Is this someone that could provide me support? Is there a level of understanding of what I'm going through? So these are all things that we think about whenever we're wanting to have a healthy moment of sharing. And when we're trauma dumping, we're not taking any of that information into consideration whatsoever, which is why I think it happens a lot more in social media than I even realized until recently, right? Like how many of you guys have gone through and you're watching reel after reel after reel, or video after video after video, and it's like one negative situation after another. And before you know it, not only do you know every detail of this person's personal life, and you've never even met them in person, but at the same time, you've just opened yourself up to all of that all at once. And many people can find it to be super heavy. And the reason why I feel like this happens a lot more now on social media than it used to be, besides the fact that obviously we're using social media platforms a lot more, is because people are finding in good ways. So this is like, I think this is a pro of social media, but people are finding that, hey, I'm finding my tribe. I'm finding my community online. Like the algorithm is bringing me to people who can relate, who can understand. There's some kind of connection and common ground here. And so they may not have someone in their real in person, lives that they can talk to, they can go to, they can find support in, that they can draw help from, but they have found it on social media. They have found people that can absolutely 100% relate to their stories in some capacity. So, although that could be a plus, right? Because you're able to connect with people that you wouldn't normally necessarily be able to meet because they're not a neighbor, they're not a coworker, they're not a close friend, but social media has brought you guys together. That's great. But the reason why it happens so much more on social media is because there aren't any guardrails, right? You're not looking at facial expressions as you're telling your story, where the person you're telling it to, you kind of read, wait a minute, like they seem overwhelmed or they don't really seem to understand. There isn't any of that. You're not seeing any facial expressions from the person that you're telling it to. You're just telling it to a screen and then posting that information on there. And then also, there's a lot of validation and reflection that happens when you're posting online, and people love validation, right? Who doesn't love an attaboy or an applause of some sort, like, way to get through that, or that sounds really challenging. And so that happens a lot through likes, comments, follows, and all of that, shares, all of that jazz, right? So I think social media has opened itself up to this a lot more than we probably now see on a day-to-day in-person interaction between people. And so I think it's really important as the viewer, as the listener, so that would have been me earlier today, to figure out a way to set healthy boundaries online. Now, granted, people might say, well, why are you even watching? Like, why are you even following that person, right? And I think there's some truth to that. Again, oftentimes people find themselves on social media connecting because there is some kind of common ground there. And so maybe yesterday it would have been totally fine for me to watch that video, but today, for whatever reason, it just registered like, wait, this is a lot. This is pretty heavy. And it was a video back to back. And so I think it's just really important as the viewer and the listener the reader, to be aware to reflect and be aware of your own mental health, your own stability in that moment. Do you have the bandwidth to continue to take in all of this negative information? There's something that as therapists that we're trained to be very, very aware of, and it's called vicarious trauma. And the idea behind that is, although you may not have directly experienced whatever it is that that client is sharing with you, but time after time after time after time again of hearing such horrific, unfortunate events that happen in people's lives, then naturally there's like this secondary trauma that occurs where you end up being negatively impacted by the stories of others. And so as therapists, obviously, that's one of the things that, since we're open to it and susceptible to it, then we're trained to do our best to really kind of be aware of that. And whether that is setting boundaries, healthy boundaries with our clients. And so, maybe there are a certain number of clients that we'll take that are struggling with a problematic area or experience just for our own sanity, or we have a certain number of sessions, clients that we see per day in order to maintain a little bit of sanity at the end of the day. Whatever those guardrails are, I think that also applies to the average person that's outside of the mental health field, because nowadays this trauma dumping is happening so often. And so I think figuring out, is today a good day for me to log on to social media? Or is it just a day for me to say, you know what? I don't think I'm even like clicking on that. Or instead of going through my For You page, that's already set to your algorithm, do I want to maybe type into the search bar videos that have to do with something that's a little bit more positive? And so I'm still connecting with people, but I'm not connecting with people that are likely to post, videos that might be a little bit too heavy for me to hear at this point in time. Or maybe you're watching something like it happened to me. And I was like, whoa, yeah, this is definitely not something that I need to be listening to in between sessions, especially as I'm preparing for the next one, right? So that might be something that you think about too, like in the moment, like, oh, is this a video that I just want to just continue scrolling and not even pay any attention to for my own sanity in order to set healthy emotional boundaries for myself online? And I think it's really important for us to do something that I call, or we call in our clinical field, a reframing. And so I don't want this to seem like I'm talking about how sharing is unhealthy or sharing is bad, or we don't want to be there for people that we've connected with online as a support. Not at all. I think that social media can be a great way for us to connect and find people that just understand and get us, and vice versa. But so I'm not saying that sharing is necessarily bad, but I am saying that sharing does need containers. So think about this, when you hear the word dumping, what comes to mind? So for me, probably because I need to do it, is a laundry basket being flipped over. And it's just like you're dumping it on, let's say, the sofa, or dumping it on your bed in order to like sift through it. And, sometimes the items will kind of go all over the place as you're dumping the basket out, right? And you have items on the bed, or a few might have fallen on the floor. Like there are no boundaries to that, right? This idea of dumping, or, maybe it's this, you're thinking about taking garbage bin, a trash bin, and you're like dumping it into a larger dumpster. It's just kind of going all over the place, right? That is not what we're needing to do in terms of sharing. That would be trauma dumping. It's all over the place. It's very disorganized. There's no consideration of like where we're dumping it onto. We're just doing it. But sharing is a little bit more intentional, where you're thinking about like, how could I pour this into, so my emotions, my feelings, my experience poured into a container that is contained. There are restrictions to that. And so I think it's really important to reframe what I'm saying, where I'm not saying sharing is bad at all. I'm saying that it just needs some containers to it. So if you have ever wondered or worried, am I trauma dumping, or am I just trying to be honest with my loved one, my partner, my friend, my coworker? I hope that this gave you language and the tools that you need in order to do so in a very healthy way, instead of doing it in a way that is later shamed or you feel really guilty about. And wanting to be heard, I just want to say this is totally normal. It is human. It is human nature to want to be heard. I always refer to the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and somewhere along there in the middle is this idea of belonging. We want to feel like we're heard, like we're seen, and like we belong somewhere. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to share, but how we share is important, and sharing in a way that honors you and then honors the people that are listening to you. And I think that is the point of contention here and the topic that we're talking about. And so hopefully this gives you a little bit more language and tools in order to do so in a healthy way for you and for your loved ones. And I always say this, if you have learned anything at all today, just please hit the like button, subscribe, or share this with someone who always ends up being that strong friend for you online. So thanks so much for stopping by the Reflection Room, where we don't just look at our lives, we learn from the way that they echo back to us. Keep reflecting.